this technique can be done on any sort of jacket. It can have a back neck facing, it can have a fusible inside or whatever. But sometimes I actually prefer to do this method because the lining usually sits a little bit nicer inside the jacket, a little bit more comfortable, and you can do a little bit more preparation on the jacket itself, which I think is really important to make sure that when you take your jacket on and off, not everything sort of opens out. So here on the stand we have got the traditionally tailored jacket. I hope you remember this from the two previous classes that we've done. And if you look very closely inside here, what I've done here in a nice pink thread is I've herringboned down the facing onto the canvas. Now, if this jacket had been fusible, I would do exactly the same thing, but you tend to do this only when you put the lining in by hand, because otherwise it's really difficult to do that prior to it going under the sewing machine. And once you've got all the lining attached, it's then really difficult to get back in there and do it and keep everything flat. So we've got the jacket on the dress form inside out, but I've got my lining made up minus the sleeves. So we're going to take the lining now and we're going to put it to the jacket in a very similar manner as we did before. Just hope it goes all the way around her. So we're going to look at matching the shoulders first of all. We're going to look at matching around the armhole and pinning and securing. So I'm going to work on this half because this half is nearest to me, and I think once you've seen one half you can guess the other one. So we've got to find the shoulder seam though, and that is really quite difficult because we've got the shoulder pad in and everything, but I can feel it. If you feel, you should be able to feel it. And I know that it's 1.5 centimetres in from the edge of the facing. So that's my shoulder seam. And if I just take a peek right inside here, I can see that there is my shoulder seam. So I know that needs to line up with that. So we've got the shoulder pad in here, we've got the sleeve heading in, so we've really got quite a chunky armhole. I just put a pin in to hold it. This is turning under quite happily along the back of the facing, exactly the same way as we did on the previous lesson. And then this is going to turn down, turn it in 1.5 centimetres, and that is going to pin down then onto the facing. I'm not going to go any further because I want to concentrate really on the armhole to start with. So we're also going to look, there's a seam here. I don't know whether or not we can pick it up, but you can tell by how many layers of fabric are. There's a seam there and there's a seam here. So those need to match up. And it can match up to the edge. And with a bit of luck, oh, the notches even match. That's even better. The armholes shouldn't have stretched because we've put tape on it. And the side seam there is going to match. And then round again to the front, my notch and my seam are both matching. So that is looking really good now around my armhole. I'll just put another pin in. So before I go any further, I'm actually going to tack that because I just want that to stay exactly where it is, and then I'm going to work on the front. So I'm just going to tack with some double thread in matching grey because although I'm tacking, there's actually no reason for these tacking stitches to come out. So I'm tacking relatively closely to the raw edge, probably about 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch away. Try and keep all the raw edges even because it will help when you put the sleeve in. Pins never want to come out when you want them to. When you want them to stay and they fall out. So let's just tack up here. I'm not going all the way through. I'm just going into the shoulder pad because that will secure it. If you haven't got a dress form at home, this is really quite difficult to do. You need perhaps a friend to stand very still with a jacket on inside out. And I think I need to be a bit taller to go across her shoulder. and down the other side. If you haven't got a dress form, I really would recommend you get one, because for doing things like this, they are just invaluable. And this is such a nice method. And it's a method everybody used to do sort of 10, 15 years ago, and then everybody started machining linings in. And this method sort of went out of favour. But I think we can bring it back. And back to the beginning again. So my armhole is secured on the lining. So what I can now do is look at securing the front. Now, you don't want to stretch it. There's a dart here which lines up with the dart there. Now you might notice that I've only stitched my dart sort of to within about 4 inches of the point. I didn't want to stitch the point in the dart. You need a little bit of fullness at the front as well. We've got the fullness at the back with the pleat. So my dart's in line there, so I can bring this across. And we're just going to turn in the raw edge and pin it, and all the way down to the bottom. And again, we're not going all the way to the bottom. We'll deal with the hems soon, don't worry, we'll get there. And then you just have to ease this in. If this is a really strong curve over your bust, you might have to run a stitch through this and just tighten it just to get the curve. A lot of that will depend on your pattern. So there we are. My lining is now all pinned in. Down the front, secured around the armhole. At the back of the neck, we would do exactly as we did in the previous lesson, secure it. I wanted to put a hanging loop in, I could do so. And then this is hand stitched in, once again, with a flat fell stitch. And once that is done, then and only then do we put the sleeves in. And if you look at the jacket that's behind me, the coral jacket, you'll see the lining is actually all hand stitched in beautifully and is now waiting to have the sleeves inserted. So I'm going to swap these jackets over and show you how to put the sleeves in. So once we've got the hand stitching done around the lining, it's time to put the sleeves in. So just make sure you've made up a pair of sleeves. The lining I'm using this time has got a right and a wrong side because it's a proper heavyweight coat lining, but it's always just as well to check you've got a right sleeve and a left sleeve. So I'm going to put the sleeve to this armhole. We're going to start at the underarm, and you may well have a notch there or a dot, but if you haven't, the side seam and the lowest point of the sleeve always match. And this time there's going to be a little pin on the inside, which you're going to find is going to prove difficult to get out shortly. And we're just going to pin round here. Again, we're looking at matching the seams to the original sleeve that's inside. So here's a sleeve seam and here's a sleeve seam. So I'm going to pin it. I'm going to put a pin on that side first of all, and then shortly I'll move that to the other side. The sleeve head, you can see I've already got my ease stitches round. I've got a little snick there which represents the shoulder, so I'm just going to fold it back and pin it to the shoulder. And then I'm going to look at this seam here. The seam is tucked inside the jacket, the sleeve seam, so that one there, I'm going to turn that under and match it to it as well. So that's as far as I'm going to go just now, because I've got to get rid of all this fullness, which is why we've got the ease stitches. So take your ease threads, 2 of them on the same side, and they always tend to get themselves tangled up when you want to use them. And I'm just going to pull those up now because I know that I've got to tighten them so that that will fit in there. I don't want creases in it, I don't want gathers in it, I just want to tighten it. And then I'm going to turn it round and I'm going to do the same here. So that pin that I put in so cleverly a minute ago, I'm just going to have to pull out because it's going to be in the wrong place. I'm just going to pull these E-stitches up as well and just tighten it. And you should see a curve come. I don't want wrinkles. And sleeves are really sort of naughty bits of fabric that always want to crease. But can you see how that's just tightened the curve without giving it any creases? So now we can fold it back on 1.5 centimetres, 5/8 of an inch, and pin it gently around the top of the sleeve. We can do that all the way around. We're going to have to stand on our heads in a minute to the underneath, but we'll do that shortly. We'll do that off the dress form and turn her round and just do this bit here. And that looks a really nice sleeve already. And it's gone in wrinkle free so far. So if you're struggling putting sleeves in, always do it on your dress form. It makes such a difference. Might be an old-fashioned technique, but you know, there's nothing wrong with these techniques that are all hand-worked. So I've done as much as I can on the form. What I'm going to have to do now is do the underneath. Now, unless I'm sort of turn myself upside down, it's really difficult to get under here. So I'm just going to put one more pin in there where I can get to it easily. And then I'm going to take it off the form, deal with the underneath, and then I'll show you how to do the stitches.